So you have those key moments in your life where something is revealed about your passion or your nature or your interest. For me, it was 1977. I was an eighth grader, and Alex Haley's miniseries Roots dropped. I realized in watching that I wanted to study genealogy, that I loved history, and that I was proud of Black joy, Black perseverance, and how we've overcome over the years. I knew neither of those things before watching that miniseries. But from that time, I've learned the importance of history and marking it. 10 years ago, our nation was in a real interesting place. We were in a phase that I refer to as sort of the on ramp of DEI. We had shootings of unarmed black men from Michael Brown to Trayvon Martin to Tamir Rice. Eric Gardner wasn't shot, but he was choked out. And then, of course, years later, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. But we began to really see this in prime time in a fresh new way 10 years ago. I had written an article called Justified Anger. We had a town hall meeting where I laid out what I think we needed to do. And then I put a team together to ask the Black community, what does moving the needle look like to us? Not what white social workers think or white judges or the Daniel Moynahans of our day. What would signify to us that the needle had moved? And we put together listening sessions that amassed audiences over 700 folks, 700 Black people. Never in the history of Madison, never in the history of Wisconsin has anyone ever convened 700 Black people to ask us anything good or bad. So in the spring of 2015, we called for a gathering to unveil what I had organized and put together a team that created the Our Madison plan, a plan that laid out the findings of what Black folks wanted to see. And we sort of crossed our fingers and just hoped that people would want to come and experience it. We set up a room with 700 seats. Those seats were filled, and about another 150 people sat on the floor. We estimate that somewhere between 900 and 950 people showed up that Friday night to find out what the Black community was thinking. Not just what I was thinking, but what the Black community was thinking. And as I prepared my speech and to talk about what was on my heart, I felt this is a moment that requires one to be audacious. That this is not time for tap dancing or placating to white audiences. And let me tell you, the who's who of white Madison was there. From the mayor to the heads of funding institutions to CEOs to professors to elected officials to nonprofit leaders. They were sitting wanting to know what the Black community was thinking and feeling. And before I rolled out and shared the findings of our group, I wrote a poem entitled Audacity. And to me, that's a word that was typically used when you're in trouble. Like, so you're going to have the audacity to sit there and say to me, because my mother would say it, my grandmother, so you're going to sit there with your narrow tail and have the audacity to look me in the eye and say whatever, whatever, whatever. It was this sense of, oh, so we're equals? Oh, so you have a platform? So, oh, you're going to speak your mind to me? Oh, so you're going to speak up now? Oh, so you're going to school me? I felt that, yeah, this was the moment to be audacious, to not be apologetic, to not be fearful, to not be comforting. This was not a moment for me to take care of white people. This was not a time for me to coddle white fragility. This was not a moment to apologetically ask if people didn't mind, could white people please allow Black people to sit on a nice, comfortable folding chair at the table? This was a moment for Black people to say what Black people say when there's no one white in the room. This was time to say, this is what we want, this is what we demand, and if this doesn't happen, then we're not going to sit at your tables and we're not going to be part of your process. This is what we want and what we need. As I started writing the poem, it started writing me. And I felt like I was crying. I felt like I was betraying my own anger. But I also felt like I was telling a truth that was liberating. So remember, I said that I love history and I love drawing lines in the sand and I love looking at pivotal historic moments. Now it's 2025. It's 10 years later. I reread the poem and it's as poignant, if not more, than it was 10 years ago. It's as needed or more as it was 10 years ago. It's powerful, it's salient, it's honest, it's truth, it's biting, but it's foretelling. And so I listened to it as I read it out loud. I was struck at how prolific it was. And I thought, again, this is one of those moments. So that I read it this time, I thought, let me produce it a little bit. Let me put a little something, something under it, around it, on top of it, because I've got a little history. I've got a lot of experience. My world, the world, our worlds have changed significantly now that we're on the exit ramp, seemingly, of DEI efforts. And I feel that it's even more important to be audacious now than it was 10 years ago. You know, many of my friends are looking and they're wondering, are Black people running to the streets? Are we afraid because DEI is under attack? We've been in this country for a half millennium. We've been in this country since the 17th century or earlier. A 4-year term with people trying to eradicate DEI in our history as CRT is not life altering to us. My excellence, my podcast, my brilliance, my ability to raise $31 million in 3.5 years has nothing to do with DEI. I started laying the foundation for this work 30 years ago when it was still called affirmative action or equal opportunity or just niceness or fairness or, I grew up watching television when we were talking about Black power and Black pride and Black people needing to step up. What I do, what I have, what I know, who I know, people with whom I build, the structures, the policies, the people I've hired since that first poem was read 10 years ago has surpassed anything I've thought or imagined or dreamed. And so do I feel that I can no longer thrive without DEI efforts? That I can no longer be excellent without the president's nod or say so? That I need an edict, a policy to make me strong and brave? When my mom moved me to this community 55 years ago, she said, "You're just as strong as anybody. You're just as smart as anybody." She told me that she thought I would write the great American novel. My teachers told me that I was smart. And although they meant well, they told me that I was articulate. You know what? Maybe we laugh at the word now, but they were right. And they were complimenting me. And so why is audacity so important to me 10 years later? Because it is even more important to be audacious in the face that is of all that's going on. Because we need to let everyone know who's interested or uninterested. Black is beautiful. I am excellent. I'm an innovator. I'm a collaborator. I'm catalytic in my leadership. And I don't need permission or pity dollars to make me live that out. So I want to share not just the poem, but the story and its history with you. I'm good. In fact, I'm so motivated to continue shining in the face of all that's happening. I am so heaven bent on being audacious in all the attacks and the lies. I am so committed to being audacious, even though there's so much fear mongering going on and gerrymandering and things to change our voice. Why is there such an attack on our history and critical race theory accusations? Why is there such fear of teaching what I have a degree in, African American history and African American studies? It's because it works. People are waking up, and I don't mean just Black people. People are waking up and realizing we haven't been told the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And so we need what I'm doing audaciously to not just promote Black people, but to free others whose minds have been limited by a false narrative that was designed to keep them asleep and to keep them mundane and to allow them to be quiet collaborators in this evil pursuit to grab power and land and people and bodies and minds. So today I'm more audacious than I was even 10 years ago. But now I need you to be audacious with me. I need you to do your part. I think what happened 10 years ago is that white people poured into a ballroom to listen what black people have to say. I think we all need to pour into ballrooms and ballparks and auditoriums and online. We all need to have our say. We need the whole history told. You need to understand my audacity. You need to be freed by my audacity. And you need to partner with my audacity. This today is one of those pivotal moments. This is one of those historic moments that we're going to look back on and either say we slept and pitied ourselves and wrung our hands, or we're going to say we made a decision to be audacious. We were audacious when we had no other options. We were audacious when we didn't have technology. We were audacious when we couldn't vote. And so if we think that a few leaders, if I may use that word loosely, political figures, that feels better, can shut down what's been brewing in the souls of black people for perpetuity, you are wrong. Don't pity me. My mother used to always say, hey, son, if you see me and the bear fighting, help the bear. So don't pity what you think Trump and his cronies are threatening against me. Because under duress, under fear, under distress, black brilliance, black creativity, black boldness, and black audacity have always risen to the occasion. And today is no different at all. So I'm still audacious, and I'm glad that this is still relevant. And we're going to show them what we're made of. And I hope you partner with us in this as well. Because the invitation is to all who are tired of being asleep and lulled into submission. We hope that this is a moment where you realize you have a voice. And if you've never been called to audacity before, this is your moment too. I'll do that again, man. An Audacious African American Community by Reverend Dr. Alex G. There was a time when being audacious and African American would cost one their life. There was a time when being audacious and African American would cost one their business or livelihood. And there was a time when being audacious and African American could cost one their reputation and acceptance by those in power. There comes a time when African Americans who currently face desperate times must seek desperate measures, meaning we must muster the audacity to speak our minds, take our places in our communities as leaders, stand for justice in the face of injustice, and fend for our children, our families, our culture, and our future. When we were audacious enough to believe that we were stronger than our chains, smarter than our captors, greater than our masters, and more humane than those who deemed us only 3/5 of a human being. We were audacious enough to fight in American wars for freedom, hoping our patriotism would be recognized as well as our equality. We were audacious enough to work in sharecroppers' fields in hope for our own 40 acres and a mule, and audacious enough to maintain sanity in the midst of it all. When we were audacious enough to learn to read when it was illegal, and audacious enough to attempt to vote when it was unsafe. On the heels of the Emancipation Proclamation, we were audacious enough to successfully run for political office, even in southern states where white citizens openly practice violence and discrimination against us as a part of their daily ritual. In spite of this, 16 of us were even audacious enough to be elected to Congress before the turn of the 20th century during Reconstruction. We were audacious enough to create churches and denominations when God's people told us we weren't welcomed. We were audacious enough to create our own schools, colleges, and universities to prepare our children for leadership in a hostile world, and audacious enough to use separate but equal classrooms and last year's hand-me-down text and reading books to train brilliant African American minds that they could compete with the best white minds in the world. We were audacious enough to work in factories, create our own medical clinics, funeral homes, clothing and grocery stores, repair businesses, barbershops and beauty salons, insurance companies, banks, and restaurants. In doing so, we built homes, created, supported, and sent our children to school and paved the way for the establishment of an African-American middle class. Let me just say this. When our collective audacity gave way to individual competition, we lost momentum, unity, and pride. The perfect storm of 345 years of slavery and Jim Crow, the war on drugs, federal incentives for single parenting, loss of tax bases due to white flight to suburbs, the departure of local jobs and economic security from inner cities and rural towns, the influx of drugs into our country, the lost hopes in our households, schools, churches, and neighborhoods, and a myriad of other social and economic challenges and policy decisions produced the magnificent crisis of inequality that we live with today. Personal prosperity blighted our collective audacity, our collective strength, and our collective economics. Many lost faith in God. Most of us lost faith in each other and our ability to do good for ourselves. The civil rights movement, though a call to interdependence, mutual acceptance, and fairness for all, was never meant to be an abdication of our African American heritage, pride, strength, or audacity. The justified anger, our Madison Plan endeavors to take civil rights a step further. We are challenging African Americans to reclaim our audacity. Our community must be strong whether or not things change, although we hope and pray that they do. African Americans have abdicated our audacity. No one took it from us, but we will reclaim it in this community beginning right now. We will collectively serve our children, support our single mothers, re-engage our struggling fathers, promote the importance of family and co-parenting, support our community's faith and business leaders, and promote our collective agenda that empowers us, not separates us from each other. Damn, this stuff is relevant.